Você já ouviu falar de uma mulher que recebe no corpo as marcas de paisel de Cristo e enfrenta perseguições dentro do próprio convento? Uma jovem que desafia o próprio pai para seguir esse chamado e, mesmo entre dores e vícios, deixa legado que atravessa os séculos? Essa é a história de Santa Veronica Giuliani, e hoje você vai descobrir como a vida dela pode transformar a sua também. From an early age, Ursula Giuliani demonstrated something that seemed beyond the norm. Imagine a child so small that she can barely walk properly, yet she kneels and clasps her hands before a crucifix. This simple gesture wasn't just childhood cuteness, but a sign of a greater calling in her life. When she lost her mother at the age of 4, she could have become a rebellious girl. But the opposite happened. A quiet strength was born within her that led her to seek solace in prayer and small acts of kindness, something most people only learn after a long time. This early loss served as a kind of school for the soul. While other children were preoccupied with play, Ursula was already immersed in reflections and attitudes that demonstrated spiritual maturity. It's like seeing someone who, even in painful situations, finds purpose within the pain. Many people, upon losing a loved one, feel crushed, but others discover that absence can transform into a living presence. Ursula's life teaches us that, even in loss, there is a seed that can blossom into compassion. And here's a practical exercise. When life takes away something or someone we love, instead of trying to fill the void with distractions, we can transform that emptiness into a source of purpose. This can be done through simple actions, such as helping a family in need, visiting someone lonely, or even setting aside 10 minutes a day to reflect on how we're living. Ursula, still so young, started there without grand plans but with small gestures. And these gestures were the foundation of something much greater that was yet to come, but which, at that moment, was hidden in the background of her story. When Ursula turned 17, God's call could no longer be ignored. Within her was a flame that grew stronger every day, a burning desire to consecrate her life entirely to Christ. But, as so often happens, the greatest opposition came not from strangers, but from within her own home. Her father, a man of practical vision, dreamed of a profitable marriage that would guarantee status and security for the family. For him, the idea of seeing his youngest daughter locked away in a convent was not only a loss, but also a waste. And so began a silent but intense battle between the desire for heaven and the expectations of earth. Ursula, however, was undeterred. Instead of rebelling against her father, she sought a different path. She intensified her prayers, multiplied her fasts, and embraced small penances, as if each sacrifice were an invisible argument before God. While many despair when they encounter obstacles to achieving their dreams, she chose to transform resistance into fuel for her perseverance. It was as if each no she received was actually a push to deepen her resolve. Deep down, she understood that it would not be possible to live the divine calling without first facing the cross of renunciation. And here lies the great practical lesson. How many times have you stopped pursuing something that burned within you because you encountered resistance from those closest to you? Ursula's journey shows us that when there is purpose, opposition is not the end, but a test of resolve. Perhaps you've heard phrases that cut like blades: "This won't work. You can't do it. Better give up now." And perhaps you've even considered giving up. But if there's something inside you that keeps beating, that insists on calling out, that's the sign that it's worth fighting for. That's how, after tears and pleas, Ursula won her father's permission and took the decisive step. She left her home, her clothes, and even the name she'd borne since birth. There, in the silence of the convent, she was reborn as Sister Veronica, ready to write a new story. Within the convent, Sister Veronica discovered that religious life was not about immediate glory, but about hidden trials. The silence of the corridors, the chill of the early mornings, and the simple, repetitive tasks shaped not only her routine, but especially her soul. Many think that holiness is made only of ecstasy and revelations, but the truth is that, for her, the path began in the humility of service, washing, cooking, obeying. While others might feel suffocated by anonymity, Veronica embraced this emptiness as a fertile field where God could plant something great. It was in this environment of renunciation that her first mystical experiences began to emerge. During long hours of prayer, she felt as if the veil between heaven and earth were being torn. Her visions were not figments of imagination, but encounters so real that they marked her body and mind. What for many would be a prison, for her was a portal. The trials, which might crush an ordinary person, became stepping stones to climb higher. It was as if every tear, every humiliation, and every imposed silence became the language through which God spoke to her. And here's a practical key for all of us. Sometimes we complain about the routines and silences in life, believing them to be worthless. But it is precisely in these moments that character is honed. How many times have you wondered why you face periods of loneliness, closed doors, and apparent abandonment? Perhaps it's because in these situations God wants to speak louder. Veronica shows us that there's no need to run from pain or silence. We need to inhabit them until we discover that within them lies a hidden treasure. This is the power that transforms trial into experience and suffering into revelation. One early morning, in the midst of deep prayer, Veronica felt something that surpassed any human explanation. Her body was marked with the signs of Christ's passion. Wounds began to appear on her hands, feet, and the side of her chest, and with them came a searing pain, but also a supernatural joy that could only be understood as a direct participation in the cross. It was as if Christ himself had chosen to engrave upon her flesh the memory of his sacrifice, making her a living witness to the mystery of redemption. Many within the convent were astonished, others doubted, but none of this distracted her. For Veronica, the stigmata were not a spectacle, but an even more radical call to love. With each wound, she experienced not only physical pain, but profound spiritual union. While some saw only suffering, she saw communion. While the world sought comfort and prestige, she accepted the mark of the Lamb. And it is curious to see how the cross, which for so many is a symbol of defeat, became for her the greatest source of victory. In moments when her body seemed unable to bear it, her soul burned even more, as if to say, "It is no longer Veronica who lives, but Christ who lives in me." And this total surrender made her shine like a flame that no shadow could extinguish. And here is a practical application for all of us. How often do we try to run away from our own crosses, believing them to be a useless burden? Veronica's testimony shows that pain, when embraced with faith, is not destruction, but transformation. Perhaps your cross is a loss, an illness, an injustice, or even a deferred dream. But if you look at it with new eyes, you may discover that it is precisely at this point of pain that God desires to unite with you more deeply. The cross you carry today can, in fact, be the altar on which your victory is being built. As Veronica matured in her spiritual life, another gift began to manifest itself in extraordinary ways: the gift of prophecy. It wasn't something sought after nor desired to attract attention, but rather a consequence of the deep intimacy she cultivated with God. Her words, often simple, carried a power that pierced hearts and revealed hidden truths. Those who listened to her felt as if they had a mirror before them, where their intentions, their mistakes, and even their future paths became clear. She didn't speak for herself, but as an instrument of something greater, a channel for a spirit that breathed wisdom into every sentence. This influence wasn't limited to the convent. Many sought out Veronica in secret, wishing to hear advice or find guidance for important decisions. Powerful men, clergy, and even ordinary people recognized that a different light came from her, capable of illuminating complex situations. But what was impressive wasn't just the precision of her words, but the humility with which she delivered them. She never presented herself as the owner of the truth, but as a servant of God who knows the mysteries of the human heart. This stance made her even more respected, for those who listened to her felt no burden or condemnation, but hope and direction. Here is a practical lesson for our lives. We all carry within us an intuition, a sensitivity that can be honed through faith and prayer. How many times have you felt the need to say something to someone, or that a decision needed to be made a certain way, only to realize later that you were right? This is a spark of that same gift, present in varying degrees. The secret lies in cultivating it with truth, humility, and discipline. Veronica teaches us that it is not enough to listen to the inner voice. It must be trained, directed, and submitted to God's will, so that it becomes not just instinct, but true inspiration. After a lifetime marked by renunciation, prayer, and a burning love for Christ, Veronica was walking toward her final stage on this earth. Her body, already worn out by so much physical and spiritual suffering, did not hide its fragility, but her eyes shone as never before. She knew that death would not be an end, but a reunion. In her final days, she remained in profound peace, surrendering each moment as if it were a silent prayer. And when the moment arrived, there was neither despair nor fear. On the contrary, her face radiated serenity, as if contemplating what she had waited for her entire life. She departed with the same dedication with which she had lived, leaving behind a trail of unshakable faith. The impact of her life did not end at the moment of her departure. On the contrary, it was there that her testimony began to resonate even more strongly. The sisters of her convent preserved her words, her mystical experiences, and her traces of faith, spreading to the world the flame she had lit. Writings were preserved, revealing the depth of her union with Christ and inspiring generations seeking to understand the mystery of the cross and the beauty of a life wholly dedicated to God. Her figure came to be remembered not only as a nun, but as an example of spiritual courage, someone who transformed pain into love and silence into prophecy. And here's the final reflection. If Veronica's life teaches us anything, it is that true legacy lies not in titles, riches, or external achievements, but in the silent impact we leave on people's souls. When you are gone, what remains are not the possessions you accumulated, but the seeds you planted. Veronica planted faith, hope, and love, and that is why her story spans the centuries. You may not carry stigmas or possess prophetic gifts, but you can leave your mark through small acts of love, firm choices in faith, and the courage to live what you believe. This is a legacy that truly transforms the world. Throughout this journey, we have seen how Veronica Giuliani's life was marked by struggles, visions, renunciation, and extraordinary gifts. A young woman who, from an early age, defied expectations, faced resistance from her own father, and threw herself body and soul into God's call. Her surrender was not an easy path. It was filled with pain, stigma, misunderstanding, and even persecution within the convent. But each fall, each suffering, each tear was transformed into spiritual strength, fuel for her faith, showing that true greatness is born of sacrifice. Veronica reveals to us that the cross is not a burden to be feared, but a stepping stone to the divine. Her life invites us to look beyond the surface. How often do we spend our days seeking only comfort, avoiding pain, running away from challenges? Veronica shows us that it is precisely in these moments of struggle that we can find our greatest purpose. She did not live for herself, but to be a sign of something greater, and therein lies the beauty of her story. Whether in the visions that transported her to the mystery of the Passion of Christ, or in the gift of prophecy that illuminated lives, or even in her peaceful death, everything pointed to one truth. Love that gives itself to the end is never forgotten. It transcends time. And this is the message for each of us. The legacy we leave depends on the courage to live with authenticity and faith. You may not experience mystical experiences like Veronica, but you certainly face challenges that demand steadfastness, choices that require courage, and moments that demand trust in the invisible. Her life is an invitation for you to become a living sign of hope in the world. And if Veronica's story continues to inspire so many today, it's because she proved that, even in pain, faith can bear eternal fruit. Now it's up to you to decide, what legacy will you leave?